The X-Men are one of the most popular franchises of all time, hosting tons of iconic characters that have their own dedicated fan bases, and we're not here to talk about any of them. No, welcome to RejeX, the show where we choose to focus on the obscure, the forgotten, and the confusing members of the canon that sorta fell through the fandom's cracks. Our focus tonight is Erik the Red, a confusing and obscure character that you've probably never heard of, also known as Scott Summers aka Cyclops. Bear fucking with me. Our story begins when Skye discovers a perfect opportunity to play dress up, because guess what? Magneto's back from the dead. How? Doesn't matter. What does matter is that this time he does not want to rule the world alone. He wants his daughter by his side. Not Wanda. The other one, the green one. Her name is Lorna. She goes by Polaris. It's a little tricky though because she doesn't even know that they are related, so he has to announce that he's her father and then offer her a chance to rule in darkness by his side. This seems to particularly upset youngest X-Man, Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, who has a bit of a crush on Lorna, which we could tell from how he comments on her body, saying it's hot. Warm. He calls her body warm, which I guess is a synonym. Regardless, he convinces the team that they simply cannot allow Lorna to make a decision on her own, so a fight breaks out, and everyone gets away, including Lorna. But Magneto is crippled by falling debris, which is important because that's how we get to the dress-up. You see, Scott's been waiting to announce a plan until the opportune moment when he has to out-drama queen somebody, and Bobby's just quit. But literally, who's gonna think about that when Scotty's wearing this? Now, technically, the helmet and the gloves are specifically designed to redirect his optic blast through his hands so as to help with the whole secret identity thing, so that explains two parts of the outfit. The rest, I could only assume he had lying around his closet. Or maybe he and the team went out to the mall and he was going in and out of the dressing room in different outfits. They were giving him like thumbs up and thumbs down like a Disney movie. I don't know. I'm getting off track. The point is he storms Magneto's base. And Scott is kind of like the tactical mind behind the X-Men, so he comes up with a really well thought out, detailed plan to just run in all angry like. Polaris naturally assumes that he is there to capitalize on Magneto's weakened state and take over the evil mutants. But this could not be further from the truth, because even when Scotty is playing at villains in leftover fetish outfits, he's still a relatively good guy, and that is why he passes Lorna's patented vibes test. He tells her that he just wants to be a part of the team, I guess assuming that tearing through their ranks is a villain version of an audition, but because Magneto is still hobbled, they just make him the leader anyway, so maybe it was the plan? I don't know, and it really doesn't matter. What does matter is that Mesmero, a green guy who hypnotizes people, roll with it, isn't keen on letting this random person just come in and take over everything, so Scott devises a plan to deal with him, and that's murder. Yeah, so Erik lets the rest of the X-Men in and they lay some copper tape on the floor so that, and I quote here, "When the unsuspecting Mesmero and his team return, 1,000 volts of electricity will course through that innocent-looking floor design, and once they're disposed of, the world will be rid of its worst threat since the bubonic plague." It doesn't work, cause Iceman comes to rejoin the team, cause of course he does, and they fry him for it, and he only lives because they explicitly state that Scott cut off the power early, which means murder was definitely the goal. But unfortunately for our League of Teenage Superkillers, Mesmero watched all this happen, and is now electing to just not walk into the trap. So another fight breaks out, and Erik's last act is destroying some sort of cannon that they were supposed to use. The real hero of the issue is Bobby, who proves to Lorna that she's not actually Magneto's daughter, which she is, but I guess at the time they both thought he was lying, so. And like I said, the real hero of the story is Lorna, who, no longer thinking she has any reason to protect Magneto, just sorta handles him instead. And then they all go back to the mansion and make weird jokes about her being Bobby's nurse. And that's the story of Erik the Red. Or at least the first one. The story of the second Erik the Red begins with a man named Devon Shikari, an agent of the Shi'ar, a galactic empire ruled by the Mad Emperor Daken, spelled like Dakin but with an apostrophe cause space. He was technically exiled to Earth by Daken's sister, the Princess Lilandra, no apostrophes, but he continued to serve in secret as an ambassador, meeting with Shi'ar agents to discuss whether or not Earth deserved to be assimilated into the Shi'ar Empire. He was set up with a pretty nice secret lair in a dormant volcano, because where else was it gonna be? And it was staffed by genetically engineered slave labor, which is the thing the Shi'ar have. Honestly, he had a pretty sweet life on Earth. Until the Emperor realized that he could wait for 9 Death Stars to align and then go to some place called the Emcron Crystal and get unlimited power. Princess Lilandra was not a fan of the plan where the Mad Emperor achieved unlimited power, so she struck out against him, resulting in her own exile and her becoming a leader of the rebellion. Unfortunately for Daken, and her if we're being honest, she also happened to be soulmates with Charles Xavier. And even though she wasn't completely sure who he was yet, she was on her way to go ask him for help. And that is where we get to poor old Devon. As the Emperor's secret agent on Earth, he was tasked with stopping her by any means necessary, so he donned his own villain identity Erik the Red. And yes, this is a completely separate Erik the Red. If you're wondering if Scott somehow knew about him, or he knew about Scott, or if either of them knew about the real-life Viking that existed, congratulations! Luckily, Devon already has a lead on the X-Men because he's familiar with Polaris. Why is he familiar with Polaris? I don't know. He didn't say. Polaris is now a doctoral candidate living in Rio Diablo with her boyfriend, Alex Summers. Not Bobby. Sorry, Bobby, but Alex makes her feel like a woman, and that feels just fine. Also, sorry, Lorna. Alex comes rushing in when he hears her scream, and sorry, Alex. Erik mind controls the two of them, which is something he could do, and they all go to the airport, where a brand new team of X-Men are talking like it's the 70s. Then they just blow up the plane Professor X is on. Nice! Job well done! Except now, obviously, he's not actually on it yet. It's going to look maintenance or something, but another fight breaks out with the brand new X-Men who, surprise, surprise, pack a bit more of a punch than the old ones. He grabs his children and runs away? Okay, I guess anyone can just pretend to be Polaris' dad now? And even though he failed spectacularly, Erik decides that the general premise of getting someone else to fight the X-Men for him was sound. It was just the choice of goons that was wrong. So he goes and recruits well-tested criminal masterminds, Juggernaut and Black Tom Cassidy, which goes about as well as you'd expect. But for his third trick, he does do something genuinely much more impressive. He brings Magneto back. Not from the dead. From being a baby, if you didn't know, at one point Magneto was de-aged to a baby, and I guess the Shi'ar are known for their anti-baby guns, so he shoots Magneto with one of those and ages him back to an age. Not his original age, but a sufficient age. It works. And this does actually succeed in distracting the X-Men. Magneto and Wolverine play a rousing game of stop hitting yourself as Devon puts the next step of his plan into action. Having Alex and Polaris, who I guess have just been under his control this entire time, attack Firelord. Ex-Herald of Galactus, Firelord. Erik tells him some lies about how the X-Men are trying to conquer the Earth and he's the only one fighting against them, which the X-Men do kind of help prove when they show up and attack him on sight. He offers up some stock I come in peace comments and Firelord is completely sold, so he joins the fight and demolishes the X-Men in 1 minute. 1 minute! Devon, understandably proud of himself, leaves the X-Men to their fate and goes after Charles Xavier, who is currently attending a lovely little dinner party being thrown by Jean Grey and her roommate, Misty Knight. Roll with it. Firelord, approximately a minute later, goes to see Xavier as well, but unfortunately for him, it seems the one thing that can stop a cosmic being with domain over fire is a cosmic being with domain over fire, and Jean's in one of her Phoenix moods. Though he serves his purpose, and Devon is able to take Lilandra, who's just crashed the party herself, and take her through a Stargate before the X-Men are able to get there. But again, we're in Prime Phoenix time, and Jean can kind of do whatever she wants, so she just reopens the Stargate and they all go through it. Bummer. From here, a truly giant fight happens that we do not have time for. I'm actually working on a much longer video about that, but here are some cliff notes. The Emperor gets himself chucked into the crystal, the X-Men go in after him, they all get a look at what it's like to be gods, D'Ken cannot handle it. Oh, and Scott's father reemerges as a charming scoundrel who comes to aid the princess in the rebellion at the last moment. That's not super relevant, but I did want to use this again. Back on track, because of Jean's phoenixness, the X-Men are fine, D'Ken is not. His one taste of godly power has left him catatonic, and Devon, seeing the writing on the wall, gets the heck out of Dodge. From here, he basically has one goal: challenge Lilandra's claim to the throne by producing D'Ken's heir. And luckily, there is one. Do you remember those genetically engineering slave pits? Well, apparently they make heirs too. And one time they mixed the DNA of D'Ken with that of a human woman they came across, Alex and Scott's mother, Catherine Summers. That's right, the rightful heir to the Shi'ar Empire is Adam X, aka Extreme. So, Erik partners with a religious sect called the Crimson Claws that is dedicated to getting Adam on the throne. The only problem is, much like Polaris, Adam doesn't know who his daddy is. He's been busy living his classic fantasy flashback life, living in peace, farming, talking with his disposable dad on Krishara, we're back to apostrophes. This is the planet where a lot of D'Ken's supporters went into hiding after the regime change. Yet, weirdly, when Erik and the Claws show up and ask if they can borrow Adam really quickly to start a teeny-weeny Shi'ar civil war, they decline. And Erik is not a fan of this decision. But somehow, despite the sheer amount of nukes he used, he's still unsuccessful. Adam has absconded across the galaxy, he's going on his own adventures, he even ends up on Earth, he finds his grandfather, helps him from a plane crash, gets him to a hospital. He does all of that before Erik thinks to go to the one planet it would make sense for Adam to be on, and they finally have their big standoff, their big fight, and Legion rewrites all of reality, starting the Age of Apocalypse. It's like the man is cursed. But eventually the timeline gets reset, and it turns out Erik won that fight. Good for him! He's got Adam brainwashed, because that's still a thing he can do, so that's it, right? He's won. No. You see, despite possessing Adam, he does not believe the Claws are ready to launch a full-scale coup against the Shi'ar Empire, so what they need to do is weaken the Empire by getting them involved in a proxy war with the Kree. And they do this by tricking Genis Vell, son of the original Captain Marvel, just named Mar-Vell, into blowing up a space station that has a lot of Shi'ar on board. Erik then sends a brainwashed Adam X to kill Genis for no reason. And in the fight, Genis is able to undo the brainwashing. So was any of that really necessary? I'd argue not. But Erik does get to do his Darth Vader moment now, so that's something. He's not Adam's father, obviously. That's Ken, that's the whole point. But he does get to announce his parentage and then, offer him a chance to rule an empire. But Adam's not really interested. He really got bit by the farming bug earlier, so he goes ahead and, did I mention that his mutant power is being able to light blood on fire? That's why they call him Extreme. But if you think that's enough to set back our good buddy Erik, then you have not been paying attention. He gets right back up, dusts himself off, and kidnaps some old people from a hospital. And just because this man values teamwork more than anything else in existence, he sends a hostage note to Scott, Alex, and their father in space! And bizarrely, this plan works. The entire Summers family shows up on the blue side of the moon. Yes, I said blue. Roll with it. With Adam in chains. But of course, it was all a ruse. Their father's crew go and save their grandparents, and the three brothers turn the full force of their attack against a now hostageless Erik the Red, with truly devastating results. He is somehow still alive, but kept in stasis to be delivered to the Imperium, where Adam also formally rejects his birthright, and just to be safe, the Shi'ar wipe everyone's minds about Adam's parentage. So that is the story of Erik the Red. I'm so glad you were all here for... The story of the third Erik the Red begins with a man named Erik Lehnsherr. And guys, it's just Magneto. He's dressing up like Erik the Red for vibes, I guess. This is only for one issue. It's X-Men number 350, The Trial of Gambit, which is a story that's not for me. It might be my personal least favorite single issue of a comic ever. So I don't really want to talk about it, but yeah, he's pretending to be Erik the Red. At least his name's actually Erik. You get a point for that. But now we're done. There's only 3 Erik the Reds, so... Okay, I'm being told that there has been some updates about the second Erik the Red's backstory, so we are going to have to go back and change some stuff. It's going to be real light. I'm sure you will not even notice. The story of the second Erik the Red begins billions of years ago, before the dawn of humanity and in the early days of the Shi'ar. Before they were a vast empire, they were a band of pillaging nomads, and they still look like birds. They came to Earth all the way back then expecting an easy raid, but came across the Threshold, the home of Earth's first mutants. Apparently, these mutants pack a bit more of a punch than other species, because they sent the Shi'ar out with their weird little bird tails between their legs. And even then, they only stopped because they were afraid of space, which is because it was a long time ago. The Shi'ar, apparently still pompous assholes back then, thought this was pretty disrespectful, so they returned with an even greater force, fully intent on genocide. They were met by 5 mutants, and things went about the same. This devastating defeat was so embarrassing for them, it led to the creation of a secret order whose whole purpose was to make sure the entire universe never found out the truth. This society was the Kin Crimson, and members of it took the suffix "the Red" at the end of their names. Hence, Erik the Red. The incident with Earth's mutants would go on to be called the First Blood Spilled, and was the first of 10 shames the Order would go on to hide. Others include the theft of hard skin, gained by experimenting illegally on innocent Dabari citizens, that gave all of the Kin Crimson the ability to manipulate hard light, essentially Green Lantern powers. As well as the birth of wet skin, a proposed alternative to hard skin that allowed them to weaponize their own blood, which they got from lobotomizing a symbiote. Lovely guys. Their first order of business, though, was just to make the Shi'ar stop looking like birds, because they really thought that was the whole problem, and honestly, they were half right. But by the time they had finally gotten that done, and had an agent to send to Earth, the Threshold was gone. But they still sent somebody, and that was Erik the Red, which was his actual name. And he watched as mutants went extinct, came back, and then half of them got shunted off to a hell dimension. His main task was to make sure that nobody from Threshold ever attempted to time travel out of their own extinction. He did go by the name Devon Shikari, he did fight the X-Men, he did team up with everybody he possibly freaking could, But that was all him just assessing the threat level of this new crop of mutants, and definitely not him failing at every opportunity. And to their credit, the King Crimson are generally very good at their jobs. They do make one big mistake though, and her name is Cassandra Nova. One part Xavier's twin sister, one part evil parasite, and all parts just the worst. She would go on to try and conquer the Shi'ar Empire by just sort of puppeting her brother's body around. And she got a little too close to discovering the shames, so the King Crimson sent an assassin after her, but she's a telepath, so she just read his mind and learned all of them instantly. It is possible the tendency to flop is a systemic issue, but for all her faults, Cassandra Nova is not really one to get involved in space opera politics, so none of this really mattered for a while up until the Krakoan Age, where Captain Pride came across a mysterious box that was 2 billion years old that had a map inside with the words "The First Blood Spilled" written on it in her own handwriting. I think you guys can all probably see what sort of time travel shenanigans are in play here, but basically the map leads to Cassandra Nova, who tells Catherine about the threshold a little bit, just vague enough to keep it interesting. She goes to the Shi'ar to get more information, but they're intercepted by who else but our good buddy Erik the Red. He duels her entire team of marauders using that hard skin ability he definitely always had, and recovers the mysterious box, which he calls the Vessel. He is then sent to Infinity's End to destroy it and remove all record of the time they got beaten really badly. And that is genuinely the last time we've seen Erik the Red. Will he come back? Will he be a different person? Magneto is about to get resurrected again, so they have an opportunity to do something funny. The only thing we can say for sure is that Scott is really good at designing villain outfits. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Do all the normal YouTube things. I'm going to start using this channel a lot more regularly, but of course I am always active on other applications like TikTok, where I post every day, and Twitch, where I stream once a week. Also, if you're feeling generous, please support the Patreon. It launched today, and anything helps.